Thank you, Raphael. Yeah, so as Raphael also already introduced, I'm Lukas from Sunhat. Today we will talk about the use of AI for reporting purposes. And when I saw the presentation of Mark and this very, let's say, detailed question that flows into a chat interface, here we are talking masses of prompts and masses of requirements at once. And that's what reporting is about, right? It's not one question, but maybe hundreds or thousands. We are Sunhat, right? So we help companies to prove their sustainability progress and working for circular economy efforts and projects. We help you to prove what you're talking about in terms of sustainability and make it accessible instantly and effortless. We are based in Cologne, nearby, close to Düsseldorf. Who is not so familiar with Düsseldorf-Cologne rivalry? We are domain experts in applied AI, right? So, like Mark mentioned, it's all about selecting the right sources, all about security, and of course, let's say going around this whole hallucination problem. We are trusted by many companies that are large, all have in common that they are working based on requirements from their key stakeholders, which make them drive circular economy efforts, but also other sustainability measures. So let's begin with a little story, right? So the daily proof struggle, that's how we call it. So imagine yourself in your company, you're receiving a mail from your colleague that is asking you for a favor. Hey, Lukas, can you please help me? A customer wants this information on our progress. Can you help me prove that data point? This can happen in reporting, this can happen in certain ratings, this can happen in certifications around circular economy as well, right? So we will talk about this. So what will happen? You start to search for information, right? And I guess 98% of the audience here is used to SharePoint or other places where you find data. So where do I find the information? Frustration sets in. So what does it mean? Mostly you are confronted with a question that is very concrete and very precise, and you are basically searching for something that you can show to somebody else in your company, right? So we call it proof, not knowledge, but something like evidence that you can show, for example, as part of a customer request. The proof gap is what we say the big problem basically for the company is. Hoopsa. So many companies do so many good things, so many things that drive sustainability forward, but data is hidden in silos, spreadsheets, and PDFs, right? Again, remembering Mark's talk, data is also hidden in books, right? But the books won't solve the reporting issue for the company, right? The company needs to drive all the information and gather it in one place to then produce a precise and accurate reporting. So without the proof on your hand, you won't be able to produce a reporting or rating, and you might not suffice the requirements of your customer, which is, I think, the most risky part of it. Why is it so important for the rubber and plastics industries, right? I think the whole circular economy challenge is so tough because it's based on very complex and very cross-functional challenges. So we all need to work together. That's why we call our platform collaborative in the first place. You need to collaborate across departments and across stakeholders in your whole supply chain. The data, and specifically certifications from your suppliers, consumption data, energy consumption, carbon accounting data, and so on, is scattered across systems and across lots of companies around you. Maybe your sister company in the same holding or a company in your supply chain. So of course, some frustration sits here too. Lots of frustration pictures here. The manual effort and risk that is needed to put all the data together is one of the roadblockers to effectively focus on the impact that you want to create. We all talk about impact, about change. When I walk through the halls here, I'm excited, and at the same time, when I remember myself yesterday searching for things in my computer, I'm not excited, right? And I think that is the big thing that exists across all these challenges in sustainability, and I would say specifically for circular economy. So how do we solve this, right? And I have way less benefit slides or anything about our platform. You are invited to visit us online, of course, but that's the only one I will talk about. So when we talk about inputs in companies, we have many types of inputs, right? And when we talk to an IT department, they would have way more on the left side, of course. But let's try to boil it down to 4 main sources that we know. The first one is knowledge management. Knowledge management is interesting, right? Because it's like our intranet, so many things, so many pages, people go crazy in their, let's say, knowledge gathering. The question here is it provable? Is it showable? Can we show it to somebody? Can we use it for the output? Right? So that is the first thing that we will talk about in our platform. Second one is all the EHSQ systems, so environmental health and safety, quality data, as well as ESG data like carbon emissions. Then we have business data, all our beloved Excel sheets, summary underscore final from Klaus, right? So we have all these files that are containing so much proof and wisdom that we need them, right? So we will include the business data as well. And then we have the data warehouses, and I guess lots of people talk about AI, assuming that we all have our homework done. I can tell you from the hundreds of companies we work with, the homework is the key, right? So the homework means having data warehouses and databases in place that can be actually used, which is tough in a very dynamic field like sustainability or things that are quite new and quite changing. So what we do then in the middle is the collaborative proof platform in 3 layers, right? The first one is all about collaboration. So when I see chatbots like the one before or others, the bigger problem is how can I solve 100 questions at once where 10 people work at the same time, right? It's like a big spreadsheet that we're working on. Not one question, but actually 100. So that's what we are solving with our collaborative features, which are all about assigning and these easy things, I guess, that are sometimes forgotten, that are needed as part of also chat interfaces. The second one is AI capabilities, and thanks to Mark again, I don't know if he's still here, but we also are based on a RAG approach. A RAG approach is the only way to basically get data from selected sources and control a bit the hallucination part of it. I would still say the hallucination probability is not 0. It can still make up pretty crazy stuff. So a RAG approach is really needed to, let's say, get the majority of problems fixed. But then what we do is we apply framework-specific / requirement-specific knowledge that helps to narrow down the exact requirement and helps to find the right data point from your inputs. And what is evolving from it is called proof management, right? So we all know SharePoint, we all know the folders, 2025, 2024, 2023, some very acribic colleagues who do this perfectly. The big problem here is, what can I show now? What can I use? I don't know. The customer asks for the data. I'm not really sure what to use. For the first time in our system, companies just manage proofs, so stuff we can show, which is not what is maybe only on the website and public data, but private data from the company that we use as part of an RFP for a new customer, as part of an investor inquiry, and so on. The outputs are exciting because they drive business value, right? A big problem in sustainability right now is business alignment. Lots of leaders say, hey, nice with your sustainability challenges, I have an economic challenge to solve. So how do we connect this? The outputs frame a really good picture. First output is that we gain speed, right? Imagine you get a questionnaire with 100 questions, you would sit there for 2 weeks, now you sit there for 2 hours, right? Which is drastically shorten the time to response for your customer. The second one is, for example, the audit, right? Might be some people here in the audience that work on audits and internal reports on it. That's one big driver of sunk cost or sunk time for teams, right? Working constantly on audits. Of course, the verification or degree of sources behind the data for reporting is important. And at the very bottom, the ratings that we want to improve. Just to name a few, something like EcoVadis or CDP, things especially not liked in Germany, just to mention this here, but things that are very important to improve data across the supply chain with regards to circular economy. So I thought I would bring a couple of learnings from actually applying AI in an enterprise context, right? So we are all talking the fancy outputs and how great it is. I think it's worth to talk about what does it mean. So the first one is the prompt, right? When I remember what Mark just told us, the let's say real deal is behind the UI, behind the chat interface, and actually in the way you prompt the RAG. So you give them quite complex prompts to retrieve the right information. It's basically like an engineer who puts in a prompt and not me as a business user. So what is key is the AI needs to understand what the requirements are, right? And when we drag and drop a PDF file with 250 pages, the problem can quickly arise that the system does not completely understand what the requirements are, right? It's like a book we drag and drop into something which can maybe be understood to 100%. The second one is you need to have lots of context to every requirement, right? A context, for example, is you have a customer from Germany and they're asking for your carbon emissions and they are basically asking you for a certain number. The question is, what is the underlying framework of this number? What is the time horizon of the number? And what is the region the number will be used in? And number 3 is the use case expertise. So basically how well you are, how much of an expert you are sitting in front of this request, right? So chatting with a book or chatting with general knowledge is something we all can do, but chatting with a question I do not understand, maybe in another language, is quite risky, right? So that's why we think you need to have a certain degree of expertise to use it. Second one is, so ChatGPT is also a RAG, but it just uses the whole internet and scraped YouTube a couple of years ago. A RAG, let's say, has this great benefit of saying we select sources, but what about the sources in a large enterprise? It's thousands of documents, it's thousands of papers, it's different, let's say, file types and so on, right? So the problem can also come up when you use too much data in your selected sources and use thousands of documents at once. So there the big question, and that's kind of the, let's say, CSRD dilemma we went through, is when you have a very broad framework to report on, from environment to health to social to supply chain, the data that is underlying is huge, right? And the possibility of hallucination is given. So that's why overloading the AI leads to exactly the same also in a RAG environment. And that's why we talk about, let's say, selected data sources and then context-selected data sources that you use in that moment and not maybe constantly the whole time. And number 3, and that's on the positive side of things, AI is really amazing in cross-framework adjustments. So what does it mean for everybody who's not into the sustainability world? On the left side here, ISO 14001 will be known, but the rest maybe not. It's all big catalogs of requirements that are quite similar, right? So they ask for similar challenges or for similar requirements. The AI is pretty amazing in adjusting this across these frameworks, right? So you put in data once and you can reuse it across different challenges and different requirements. So what will be possible in the next 12 to 24 months, right? So there was this, ChatGPT was started in 2022. So we think the whole question about AI in a business context is full automation or not. Business leaders I talk to, they are partially interested in what I talk about, improve and blah, blah, but they actually want to save costs and they want to completely automate what is going on, right? Which is a big leap because we talked about the full expertise requirements and the context that you need to do this. However, we think that in the next 24 months, AI can do more in drafting, creating, let's say, analyzing data for you, and you are more, let's say, configuring the system and making sure that the system is fed with the right data, which is a big difference to today, where we get a prompt, get a text back, go in and change the text and go back. So there's lots of, let's say, adjusting by the human in the AI. Oopsa. And what not, right? So lots of people we talk to in our first contact points when people are interested in Sunhat, sometimes we sit in front of the person that is about to be replaced by the AI, question mark, right? And I'm the AI bringer, so sometimes can be a tough start, right? But we think AI won't replace human judgment in the next 12 to 24 months, right? So human judgment is basically looking at requirements, looking at data, looking at things that are generated by the AI, but spotting things that just don't make sense in the broader context of the company and the broader context of an industry, right? The second one is, of course, guaranteeing outcomes, right? Guaranteeing outcomes means we are hired for a certain project and the business leader wants a certain outcome, certification X. We might not guarantee this without humans in the loop, right? So you might need humans still to guarantee these outcomes. And of course, the zero effort reporting, which is the same, which basically means that you can produce a report without any additional human input. So we think that AI is amplifying teams, like we talked about lots of other AI use cases today, and it won't replace them quite soon. It rather, let's say, shows us where we can create more impact, which is great. So the outlook for us, or at least looking into the future, means that we think proof is the key ingredient to, let's say, verify and not, let's say, confuse ourselves in all the AI applications. What does it mean? I think we need data to prove what is happening and prove what the progress is that we are achieving. And yeah, I think the companies in the future that have the ability to react promptly to requirements, to react promptly on customer requirements, to act promptly on various changes that are happening around us, will be the companies that win. So that's why we think being able to prove is one of the biggest value to drive a business forward. That's why we have this super fancy claim. Proof becomes a competitive advantage. Yeah, so I'm a bit quicker. So do you have any questions?
Thanks. First of all, thank you very much. I saw a lot of nodding in the audience, so we actually have some time for questions. So are there questions for Lukas?